Perugia, a quiet medieval city in the heart of Italy, known for its chocolate, its universities, and its peace. But in November 2007, that peace was shattered by a murder that would grip the world and divide it for years to come. It was the morning of November 2nd, 2007, when police in Perugia received a call from a young Italian man, Raffaele Solicito. He said something wasn't right at his girlfriend's apartment. The front door was open, there was blood in the bathroom, and one of the bedrooms was locked. When officers arrived at the modest stone house on Via della Pergola, they found a scene that will haunt even seasoned detectives. Inside the locked room lay the body of Meredith Kercher, a 1-year-old British exchange student. She was lying partially covered by a duvet, her throat cut, her body showing signs of a violent struggle. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the hum of the forensic cameras and the low murmurs of investigators trying to piece together what had happened. Meredith had been living in Italy for just a few months, studying at the University of Perugia. Her flatmates, including 20-year-old Amanda Knox from Seattle, were part of a small, vibrant international student community. But that morning, everything changed. Within hours, the house on Via della Pergola became the center of an international storm. A crime that would expose cultural rifts, ignite tabloid wars, and question the very nature of truth and justice. In a city built on centuries of history, one night of horror would become immortalized in headlines, not just for what happened, but for who the world decided was guilty. Before the headlines, before the courtroom battles, there was just Meredith, a young woman full of laughter, kindness, and promise. Meredith Susanna Cara Kercher was born on December 28, 1985, in South London, England. The youngest of 4 siblings, she grew up in the London suburb of Colston, where friends described her as funny, loyal, and endlessly curious about the world. She loved literature, languages, and travel. Her family called her Mez. At 21, she was studying European politics and Italian at the University of Leeds. When the opportunity came to spend a year abroad, she chose Italy, drawn to the language, the food, and the promise of independence. She was finally living her dream, her mother, Arline, would later say. That's what makes it so cruel. Meredith arrived in Perugia in September 2007, excited and full of life. She moved into a shared cottage with 3 other young women, 2 Italian roommates and 1 American, Amanda Knox. Perugia, a small hilltop town known for its ancient architecture and student energy, was the perfect place for new experiences. Meredith attended classes, made friends easily, and even started dating an Italian boy named Giacomo Salenzi. She kept in close touch with her family in London, calling home almost every day. Her father later recalled how proud she sounded just a week before the tragedy, talking about her studies, her new friends, and the Halloween party she was planning to attend. By late October 2007, Meredith had settled comfortably into her new life, but she had also begun to notice small tensions in the apartment. Little things, like Amanda's carefree habits, the dishes left undone, strangers coming and going. Still, no one could have imagined what was about to happen. On November 1st, 2007, the night after Halloween, Meredith texted her mother one last time. "Don't worry if you don't hear from me tomorrow. I'm fine." It will be the last message she ever sent. It began as an ordinary evening in Perugia, laughter, music, and Halloween lights still flickering from the night before. But for Meredith Kercher, it will be her final night alive. November 1st, 2007, 8 p.m., Meredith returned home to the small hillside cottage on Via della Pergola after dinner with friends. It had been a quiet, cool evening. She was tired from a long day of classes and social events. She planned to relax, maybe watch a movie, and sleep early. Her American roommate, Amanda Knox, spent the evening at the apartment of her boyfriend, Raffaele Solicito. That meant Meredith was alone in the house, or at least she was supposed to be. Neighbors later reported hearing faint noises, voices, perhaps, or an argument sometime between 10:30 and 11:30 p.m. A loud thud, then silence. A night turned tragic. What happened inside that small room remains a point of debate and speculation to this day. But what investigators pieced together later was horrifying. Meredith had been attacked in her bedroom. There were signs of a violent struggle, overturned furniture, defensive wounds on her hands, and DNA from multiple individuals. She had fought desperately for her life. Her throat was cut with a knife, likely around 11:30 p.m., and she died within minutes. Across town, Amanda and Raffaele would later claim they were together all night cooking dinner, smoking, and watching a movie. But their stories would soon change small inconsistencies that would become massive cracks under police pressure. The morning after, when Meredith failed to answer calls the next morning, friends grew worried. Amanda returned to the house and found the front door open. There were specks of blood in the bathroom sink and the toilet unflushed. The bedroom door was locked, and when police finally broke it down, they found Meredith lying on the floor, a scene that would shake the small city to its core. What began as a mystery in a student flat would soon become an international obsession. The small cottage on Via della Pergola was supposed to be a place of laughter, late-night study sessions, and student life. But on the morning of November 2nd, 2007, it became a crime scene sealed off by yellow tape and crawling with investigators. When officers forced open Meredith Kercher's locked bedroom door, they froze. Blood was splattered on the floor and walls. The duvet partially covered her body, a haunting detail suggesting the killer may have felt remorse or shame. Her throat had been cut, her phone, keys, and 2 credit cards were missing. A window in another room appeared broken glass scattered outside the wall. At first glance, it looked like a burglary gone wrong, but investigators soon noticed something strange. The broken glass was on top of clothes that had already been ransacked. If a burglar had broken in, why would the glass fall on top of the mess, not beneath it? It looked staged, one investigator later recalled, as if someone wanted us to think it was a robbery. In the bathroom shared by Meredith and Amanda Knox, police found small traces of blood on the sink, on the bath mat, and even on a faucet. There was also an unflushed toilet in another bathroom containing feces that would later lead investigators to another suspect entirely. Outside the house, shoe prints and partial fingerprints were taken. Blood samples and DNA swabs were collected from every surface, forming the foundation for a case that would later be called the most controversial forensic investigation in modern Italy. Amanda Knox and her boyfriend Raffaele Solicito were both present when police arrived that morning. Their behavior, according to investigators, seemed odd. Amanda was seen kissing Raffaele outside the house, and at one point doing yoga stretches at the police station, behavior that will soon be interpreted by the media as cold and inappropriate. The police began to wonder, was this grief or guilt? What the investigators didn't know was that their next move would set off one of the most debated trials in true crime history. With the discovery of Meredith's body, Perugia's peace vanished overnight. The local police, overwhelmed and under pressure, launched an investigation that would soon spiral into chaos. Within 24 hours, the cottage at Via della Pergola was sealed off. Forensic teams worked around the clock, collecting every possible trace of evidence: blood, DNA, fingerprints, fibers. News of the British student's brutal murder spread fast, and the press swarmed Perugia. The world wanted answers, and the police wanted suspects. Amanda Knox, Meredith's 20-year-old American roommate, was quickly placed under a microscope. Her behavior, by some accounts, appeared strange. She laughed, kissed her boyfriend outside the cottage, and spoke freely to journalists. But others later argued that her reactions were just the confused, nervous behavior of a scared young woman in a foreign country. Still, in the eyes of police, Amanda and her boyfriend times Raffaele Solicito seemed too calm, too composed. On the night of November 5th, Amanda and Raffaele were brought in for questioning. The interrogation lasted all night. Amanda, exhausted and confused, was pushed hard by investigators. According to her later statements, she was yelled at, slapped, and pressured to name someone. Under duress, she signed a statement implicating Patrick Lumumba, the owner of the bar where she worked part-time. She claimed she had visions of Patrick being at the house that night. Hours later, Lumumba, a respected Congolese businessman, was arrested, but there was no evidence against him. He had an airtight alibi. That's when police realized they had the wrong man, one journalist would later say. But by then, the story had already exploded worldwide. When Lumumba was released after 2 weeks, Amanda and Raffaele were rearrested this time, charged with murder. The narrative has shifted. The media dubbed her Foxy Noxy, and Perugia became a global stage. But while the world was fixated on Amanda, the real killer's DNA was already waiting in the lab, unseen, untested, and ready to change everything. While Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solicito sat behind bars, forensic scientists in Rome were examining DNA samples from the crime scene. And what they found would flip the investigation on its head. In mid-November 2007, Italian investigators analyzed biological samples taken from Meredith's room. Among them, fingerprints, a bloody handprint, and traces of DNA found on her body and belongings. The results came back, none of it matched Amanda or Raffaele. Instead, the DNA belonged to a man named Rudy Herman Guede, a 20-year-old from the Ivory Coast who had been living in Perugia. Guede was known to local police for minor offenses, break-ins, thefts, but nothing violent. He often played basketball with students and occasionally visited the very cottage where Meredith lived. When police went to question him, they found he had vanished. Guede had fled Italy and was later tracked to Germany after logging into his MySpace account from an internet cafe. He was arrested in Koblenz and extradited to Italy. When questioned, Guede admitted he'd been in the house the night of the murder but claimed he didn't kill Meredith. He said he and Meredith had been making out when she suddenly screamed. He claimed he ran to the bathroom and returned to find an unknown man stabbing her. To investigators, his story didn't add up. Guede's bloody handprint was found on Meredith's pillow. His DNA was on her body and her clothes. He had fled the country, carrying her stolen items. The evidence against Guede was overwhelming, noted one forensic officer. But that didn't mean Amanda and Raffaele were innocent, at least, not yet. Prosecutors now faced a choice. Did Rudy act alone or was it a group attack gone wrong? They chose the latter. And so began the prosecution's central theory, that Amanda Knox, Raffaele Solicito, and Rudy Guede had killed Meredith together in a twisted, drug-fueled night that spiraled into violence. It was a theory that would captivate the world, but it rested on fragile ground. By early 2008, the quiet university town of Perugia had become the world's most watched courtroom. 3 young people stood accused of a murder that blurred the lines between truth, fear, and media spectacle. Rudy Guede was the first to face trial. In the fast-track proceeding, he was convicted of sexual assault and murder in October 2008 and sentenced to 30 years in prison, later reduced to 16 on appeal. But prosecutors maintained their theory. Guede didn't act alone. That same year, Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solicito were formally indicted for Meredith Kercher's murder. The case had everything the media loved: a picturesque setting, young, attractive suspects, and an undercurrent of sex, jealousy, and betrayal. But in the rush to tell a sensational story, something vital was lost: clarity. Italian tabloids painted Amanda as the angel-faced killer. British headlines portrayed her as manipulative and cold. American networks, on the other hand, began to question whether she was being framed by a flawed justice system. Every smile, every outfit, every gesture was analyzed. A moment of laughter between Amanda and Raffaele became proof of guilt in one article and nervous trauma in another. "It wasn't a trial," said one reporter later. "It was theater." Meanwhile, Meredith's family, quietly grieving, often said they felt forgotten, overshadowed by the spectacle. The prosecution argued that Amanda had orchestrated a sexual game gone wrong. The defense countered that the evidence was contaminated, the DNA inconclusive, and the story implausible. In December 2009, after nearly a year of testimony, Amanda and Raffaele were found guilty. Amanda was sentenced to 26 years, Raffaele to 25. But even as the verdict was read, questions hung heavy in the air. Could two students really have done this, or had the wrong people been condemned? By the end of 2009, the world believed the story was over. Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solesito were behind bars, and Meredith Kercher's killer had been caught. But in the years that followed, the case would unravel piece by piece, exposing cracks, not just in the evidence, but in the very system that produced it. Amanda and Raffaele's legal teams immediately filed appeals. Their argument was simple yet devastating. The forensic evidence that convicted them was flawed. Two key pieces of DNA had sealed their fate. A kitchen knife found at Raffaele's apartment, said to have Meredith's DNA on the blade and Amanda's on the handle, and a clasp from Meredith's bra, supposedly linking Raffaele to the crime scene. But independent experts now revealed something shocking. The DNA samples were tiny, collected weeks after the murder, and likely contaminated. The evidence, one forensic consultant said, was scientifically unreliable. The knife could have come from anywhere. The appeals court in Perugia began to see a different picture, one riddled with doubt. In October 2011, after nearly 4 years in prison, Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solesito were acquitted. As the verdict was read, Amanda sobbed uncontrollably. She returned home to Seattle the next day, met by a media storm as intense as the one that had condemned her. "I'm glad to be free," she told reporters, "but nothing will ever bring Meredith back." In 2013, Italy's Supreme Court shocked the world by reinstating the convictions, ordering a retrial. Amanda and Raffaele were convicted again in 2014, only to have those convictions finally overturned for good in 2015. After 8 years of legal chaos, both were declared fully innocent. By then, the damage had been done, lives destroyed, reputations shattered, and Meredith's family still without peace. While the world debated Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solesito, one man remained behind bars. The only person ever definitively convicted of Meredith Kercher's murder, Rudy Herman Guede. Rudy Guede's trial ran separately from the others. He opted for a fast-track proceeding, which meant less media attention, but also a quicker verdict. In October 2008, he was found guilty of sexual assault and murder, and sentenced to 30 years in prison, later reduced to 16 on appeal. The court concluded that Guede had acted with others, but never clearly identified who those others were. Even after Amanda and Raffaele were cleared, that statement, "acted with others," remained in the legal record. It was like a ghost in the verdict, one Italian journalist said. "Someone else must have been there," they said, but who? Guede's DNA was found in multiple places inside Meredith's room, on her clothes, her handbag, and the pillow beneath her body. His bloody handprint on the wall became one of the most chilling images of the investigation. He admitted to being there, but claimed he fled after a mysterious stranger attacked her. Prosecutors never believed him. They said Guede had likely broken in, possibly hoping to steal, and that Meredith surprised him. What followed was a struggle, a panic, and then tragedy. In November 2021, after serving 13 years, Rudy Guede was granted early release. He began working with social reintegration programs in Italy, a free man once again. His release sparked outrage among some of Meredith's supporters, while others simply sighed, weary of the endless headlines. Rudy Guede walked out of prison, but the truth about that night never did. For all the trials, the headlines, and the endless debates, one truth remains. A 21-year-old woman named Meredith Kercher lost her life, and no verdict can ever change that. Meredith's family, her parents, John and Arline, and her siblings endured more than a decade of legal battles and media chaos. They often spoke of the unbearable frustration of seeing their daughter's name overshadowed by sensationalism. People forgot there was a real person at the heart of this, her sister Stephanie once said. Meredith wasn't the headline, she was our everything. They rarely sought the spotlight, choosing instead to honor Meredith quietly. To them, justice was never about vengeance, it was about dignity. The case of Meredith Kercher wasn't just about guilt or innocence. It was about how the world reacts to tragedy, how the press can twist facts into stories, how fear and beauty sell papers, and how easily truth can drown in noise. Amanda Knox once vilified as a monster, became a voice for wrongful convictions and media accountability. Raffaele Solicito rebuilt his life in Italy, still marked by the years he lost. And Rudy Guidi, the man found guilty, remains a shadowed figure, a reminder of how little we still truly know. Perugia has returned to its quiet rhythm. The cottage on Via della Pergola sits mostly empty now, its windows shuttered, the walls scarred by history. Is a case that asks the world to look closer, not just at crime, but at judgment itself. In the end, Meredith Kercher's story is not just one of death, but of how easily truth can be lost in the noise of the world. Thank you for watching this episode of True Crime with Danny. If you believe that every story deserves to be told with truth and empathy, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life mysteries that shaped our world.